Okay, excellent. Thanks, guys. So welcome to the opening panel of the first ever Locked Up Festival. And for the next hour, we are going to be discussing the phenomenon of one-star reviews. Now, every writer loves getting constructive feedback, but I think all of us in the panel can agree with John Steinbeck, who once said, unless a reviewer has the courage to give you unqualified praise, I say ignore the bastard. So on the panel, we've got the author of the Thorn series and member of Fun Living Criminals, Mark Billingham, whose latest book is coming out in just about 3 weeks, I believe, and that's Crybaby.
It is, and it's Fun Loving Crime Writers. We're not in the Fun Loving Criminals.
Did I say Fun? I do that all the time.
Did.
Sorry.
The number of people who turn up to see us and then are massively disappointed.
You do look quite similar to Huey from Fun Loving Criminals.
Fair enough.
The number that happens a lot anyway. People turn up to see us and are massively disappointed.
We also have Elly Griffiths, who is, of course, the author of the Ruth Galloway series, and the latest book in that series is The Lantern Men. Hi, Ruth.
Hiya.
Elly.
We all have so many names. We have too many names.
Yes, it's quite confusing. I'm grateful to Zoom for labelling me as Alex Knight so I can remember that that's who I am today.
Well, me too. Elly Griffiths, that is who I am.
That's who you are. And rounding out the panel, we've got somebody who's kept the twin names fairly simple, Christopher and Chris, although lately he's branched out into being Ambrose as well. Chris Brookmyre, of course, is the author of the Jack Parlebane series and many other standalones, and the latest one is Fallen Angel. Hi, Chris. See,
nice work.
Got the book. As Luca said, you can get a 25% discount off of all of these books at the Watchstones website if you use the promo code LOCKEDUP. So I thought we would just start out with a show of hands. Can everybody just stick their hand up if they read their Amazon reviews? Okay, and next question, who is lying? Okay, so the best thing to do to look at one-star reviews is actually get some examples of some. So who wants to, I know you've got some examples prepared of some of your favorite one-star reviews. So who would like to kick us off?
Why did the yellow thing go to me?
The yellow thing has chosen
You've been nominated.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll start off with, well, maybe I should start with my first ever book, Quite Ugly One Morning. And in fact, I see we've got on the chat, we've got lots of people on from the USA. Got lots of one-star reviews from the USA. And see, I'll give a wee example of some of them. This is one of the worst books I have read in a very long time. Sometimes one can get an inkling after reading the first few pages of how a book might be. This one had me after the first 2 words, 1 star. But then someone, the next review went one better. They said, closed book after first word of the first chapter. I could not get past the first word. I guess there are people who talk like that, but I found it offensive. 1 star. The word was Jesus.
First word.
Jesus.
What was it? Jesus.
Admittedly, the second word was fuck. You know, there was going to be an awful lot of that word thereafter. But yeah, that was a couple of reviews from the US of Quite Ugly One Morning. But this was a British review of it that said, having grown up on Chandler and Ross MacDonald, this was unsubtle crap. I suspect that within months it will seem very dated indeed. 1 star. This review was from 2013, at which point the book had been in print for 17 years.
When I should admit that when I put my hand up to say I read my own reviews, I do generally just tend to concentrate on the 1-star reviews. I promise, just because they are just hilarious, and the reason that both Chris and I'm sure Elly's got loads, but the reason Chris and I have so many, to hand, I mean, is that we collected them up quite deliberately because we do. For a few years, we've been performing this rather what's a good word for it, Chris? Shambles of a show that we do late night at some festivals, which is it's very rude, and we read out some of the more unusual email correspondence we've had. But one section of the show is just devoted to 1-star reviews. So we seek them out. I mean, we've spent many years seeking them out. And there seems to me two sorts. There's two sorts of 1-star reviews. There's the 1-star reviews that are actually commenting on, you know, making a legitimate point about a very, very bad word or whatever. Then there are the 1-star reviews, like this one. This is a 1-star review from my first book, Sleepyhead. I cannot review this as I have not read it yet. 1 star. What are those kind of reviews?
I've got a few like that. Actually, those don't hurt as much.
Or this isn't my book, it's my husband's. 1 star. What? Just what? This is the favourite one from my first book, Sleepyhead. Bought this book used / very good. Cover fell off as I opened it. Pages dingy brown. Looks tatty and I felt sick touching it. Not read it yet. 1 star. I felt sick touching it. Doesn't get much better than that, does it? I think we should put those kind of things on the back of our books instead of the good ones.
Definitely.
And there are some reviews that do really make you want to read the book, aren't they? And I said I didn't read my reviews, and I really don't, and I'm super sensitive, so I never look at the 1-star ones until I had to prep for this. So now I am super depressed because I have been reading all my 1-star reviews. So thanks a lot, you know, Alex and Steve and Luca. Thank you. But actually they are quite fascinating. And some do quite make you want to read the book. There's one here. So I've got one here. It says, I read the first 3 books back to back, which is very nice, wasn't it? I still could not muster any interest in the characters. Everyone except Nelson's wife is sleeping with someone they ought not to. I am no prude. I'm not sure about that. I am no prude, but subtext that anyone or anything feels goes out of context in these stories. It is something more. It is more fitting in something Jilly Cooper might write. And there are too many inner worlds for the characters.
Too many inner worlds.
So, you know, I'm okay with that, really. And also, I'm a big Jilly Cooper fan. So that's fine. But of course, there are lots of 1-star reviews that just say awful, I hated it, or I haven't read it. Or there's one that said that the book starts from the front. And I don't know why that was a bad thing. Because
where were they expecting it to start?
Were they ordering a copy in Hebrew?
Well, or like one of those choose your own adventures where you. But I do also remember being on an event with lovely Phil Rickman. I'm a huge fan of his, and he, as part of his, so he wouldn't mind me sharing it because it's part of his sort of thing. He read out a 1-star review that made you long to read his book, and it was something like, I expected this book to be an ordinary murder mystery, but in fact, it's full of folklore and devil worship and people having sex. And you thought, yeah.
That sounds great.
Bring it on.
Take my money.
I mean, you kind of want the 1-star review that floats to the top of the pile to be one that's either funny or obviously written by an imbecile, because you don't want a sort of really incisive critique of your book that you actually agree with on some level appearing as a 1-star review. So it's quite nice if you get ones like hasn't arrived yet, 1 star.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes, to be honest, the 5-star reviews are as equally ill thought out.
Yeah,
often as the 1-star reviews, but the ones that just make you laugh. The ones. This is for my second book, Scaredy Cat. I received this book as a gift, and I assume the person who gave it me doesn't like me very much. On the front, it says it's the best book Martina Cole has read in years. I can only assume it's the only book she's read in that period. That's gold, isn't it? That's fantastic 1-star review.
My favourite with it recently, there was you're talking about the ones that end up first. It was the second review of this novel. It was a 1-star review, and it said I printed it out because it has subsequently been deleted. But it said it says, "Be warned, this is science fiction nonsense. This is for Places in the Darkness. I paid £10 to read 1 page of terrible science fiction. This needs a serious science fiction warning in capital letters on the Amazon site. A complete waste of a tenner." Now, can anyone see anything that might have tipped them off as to why this might be a science fiction novel?
That looks like a romantic comedy to me.
Yeah. The space station is a bit of a red herring there, I would have said.
But my very first book, which is written as Domenica De Rosa, my real name, was called The Italian Quarter. And a lot of people complained there was too much Italian stuff in it. So, you know, there was a clue there, really, in the title. But
what other one-starers have you dredged up, Elly?
well, that's I ran out of sort of. I was too stressed to type them all out, but that was one of them. There's another one, another disappointed Christmas present. Somebody who got a Christmas present didn't like it. There was somebody, and I thought this was quite spooky. And I'm looking at you, Mark, and your doll in the background, because somebody complained. Yeah, I'm not looking at it.
Don't look at it.
Somebody who complained about the baby voice. And I was really, I don't know what that meant, that there was a baby voice in their head when they read it. But I think they might have been referring to the audio version, which I haven't listened to, I'm afraid, but I think they're really good. And I think somebody does a baby voice for one of the children in it. But the review said something like, when I read this, I had a baby's voice in my head.
Maybe that's their problem.
Yeah, that's their problem.
You know, really, I mean, well done.
I think some people do overstate their antipathy. This is a review. This is a one-star review of a book of mine called The Burning Girl. I would rather have my legs cut off than read the conclusion of The Burning Girl. 1 star. Really?
That's pretty extreme.
Isn't that bad? But some people get a bit poetic. This I love this. This is a review of Buried, 1 star. To elaborate on or even synopsize the plot would be to waste time that could otherwise be spent gazing at floating dust.
They want to be a writer.
I know, I kind of like, I like that. 1 star.
Do any of you ever go on and see what other things your 1-star reviewer likes?
Yeah.
Because that's an
pure.
interesting little rabbit hole.
Yeah, I looked at my most recent one, got a sort of slightly snotty 3-star review, and I went and had a look at his previous ones, and he'd slammed Michael Connolly and lots of other far better writers than me. So that definitely makes you feel better when you can see that you're not alone.
The other weird 1-star reviews you get. So this is a 1-star review, right, of my first book. A very clever medical intrigue with all the thrills of a murder suspense thrown in. Fast moving and believable. Great characters. Well written. Lovely to read something British rather than American. And I highly recommend this book. 1 star. Now, you can put that down to some slip of the mouse, maybe, or a misunderstanding of the way the star system works. But it's that kind of review that really, or they'll go, the best thriller I have ever read. 4 stars. What have you got to do to get that last fucking star? Really?
Yes. I've seen a few of them. I really enjoyed this book, 1 star. And I saw one today when I was looking, and I saw someone had commented, and the person had commented saying, "Did you mean to give this 5 stars?" And then I saw it was me. I must have been there before. What about you, Alex? Have you got any you want to share?
Yeah, I've got one it's actually quite long, and I turned it into a bit at the Crime and
Short story.
Yeah, and it's actually, I mean, embarrassingly, it's probably better than the book, and actually hits most of the same story points as the book. So I'll sort of quickly read from this, but this is my favourite 1-star review. That's actually I genuinely like better than a lot of the 5-star reviews I've revealed. So this is of my first book, The Killing Season, and the reviewer has gone to a lot of effort summarising the plot. I'm a tough, uncompromising loner who always happens to be within driving distance when something big goes down. And by something big, I mean something that those desk jockeys shackled by their rules and regulations can't get their hands dirty to sort out. So someone massively important comes to me and asks me to do what they can't, provided it involves finding someone, that is, even though I mostly go on hunches. Anyway, I come in and I show them how it should be done, even when they're all up in my grill and stuff. Oh, and I get paid. That is all you need to, and indeed will ever know. Hi, I'm the bad guy. I'm a killer. Grrr, I'm such a killer. I kill people, and I do it all the time because I'm a killer. Buying groceries, kill someone. Neighborhood barbecue, kill someone. See a man wearing a hat I don't like, kill someone. Have the lone wolf badass tracking me at my mercy and a gun pointed at him, monologue time. Ha ha ha, you'll never stop me. I'm such a killer. Oh, he got away. Well, I'm sure that won't come back to haunt me. Also, I'm totally not part of some conspiracy that I don't know about. I'm a stone killer. Grrr. Hello, I'm the tough, feisty, single mother FBI agent who is career focused, but also worries about her daughter, like a lot. I'm made to work with a mysterious and attractive mysterious man with no law enforcement credentials. And the fact that he's just grafted onto a massive manhunt that is probably the most important thing happening in the country at present without any explanation or justification is just fine by me. Oh no, my hair's in my face. Let me flick it away. Oh no, he's just so dreamy and damaged. I appear to have slept with him. Well, it's fine. I'm sure there's no need for me to keep mentioning my daughter too. It's not like she'll feature in this at all. I have just saved you the experience of reading The Killing Season by Mason Cross. You're welcome. And if I hadn't written the book, that would really make me want to read it.
That is to be fair to whoever wrote that, there is a bit too much hair flicking.
Yeah.
You know what? Sometimes you learn a valuable lesson from these reviews.
And yet I've got hair flicking in all the 7 books that followed it, but there you go.
You notice that there's a sort of genre of one-star review where the real agenda becomes clear, which is it's just a pretext for them to tell you their area of expertise.
Yeah.
So if I found there's one for all fun and games till somebody loses an eye. This one has only 1 star because I can't even get through the prologue. A bunch of, well, I don't know what they are. That's the point. Terrorists, spies, good guys or bad guys. A character called Brett leading a siege on some company. And an ace helicopter pilot who gets out of her machine, leaving it unattended with the blades rotating. I'm a pilot. You don't do that sort of thing. And these little things annoy me. And then I had one for Places in the Darkness, where this is someone who, this is the territory you go into when it's sci-fi. You know you're going to get the sort of engineering and science nerds laying it out. And this guy really goes to town. Others have written on the plot, so I won't go into that too much. Suffice to say that I found it wrapping up a bit too early. What bothered me, though, was the profound misunderstanding of physics. For most stories, even hard SF, that's not really an issue. You will just shout artificial gravity or whatever, and off you go. Here, though, it's a space station with a giant rotating wheel providing an artificial gravity, and there is one way that works. The author could have spent 10 minutes Googling that, but didn't. So, near the beginning, for instance, there is an all-stop where the rotating wheel breaks to a stop suddenly. I'll put aside how you suddenly break billions of tons of spinning at high speed. You can't brake against the rest of the station without spinning it up, although you could have massive engines on the rim and an incredible amount of bracing, I suppose, unlikely as that is. The point is, though, that then the garden party inside the wheel wouldn't suddenly just bounce off a bit and float off into the air as it does. The wheel is, say, 2 kilometres across. These people would hit the ground tangentially at 100 metres per second, well over 200 miles per hour. They'd be strawberry jam, not bobbing around in the air. If the wheel is just 30 metres per second, nearly 70 miles per hour, we can surmise it's much larger from the author's description. He just goes on and on and on like this for quite some time. There's another scene near the end where the characters are on the underside of the rotating wheel, moving around the wheel, but in apparent zero gravity. No, they'd be hanging from the bloody thing as I try to fling them off into space. Anyway, there are plenty of other related misunderstandings, but you get the drift. If gross inaccuracy is a hard science fiction book, in a hard science fiction book doesn't bug you, it's not a bad read. If it does, buy something else.
And that ends up, I now feel like I'm in a vortex or sometimes, but there's also a kind of subcategory of people who are very concerned about roads, aren't there? And how you get to places. And I do get quite a lot of that because, and I should say, like all of us, I have some lovely reviews and I'm super grateful to people who write them, but my books are set in Norfolk and some are set in Brighton where I live. And there are a lot of people who are very concerned about how to get to Ruth's university. So my main character teaches at university, but it's a made-up university. But so many people tell me that you can't go that way on the ring road, or yet it only exists in my head. It's very interesting.
They love to point out where you've gone wrong. They loved. I mean, in the old days, back when people used to write letters, they would be written in green ink, probably, or all in capitals, pressing so hard that they've actually gone through the paper. And they'd always start, my enjoyment of your otherwise excellent book was spoiled by the fact that, and then, we'll point out that the character would not have taken the A34, but would in fact have gone up the... Chris, I don't know whether you've got it to hand, but do you have somewhere handy the letter you got about your really piss poor research on the German travel system? While you're digging that out, this is sometimes you just want to give the 1-star reviewer a cuddle because you just think so. This is a review of The Bones Beneath, Buy this if you ever feel that you want your life to become less interesting. No story, no life, very disappointing rubbish. And I just kind of think that person needs a bit of a hug.
And that's almost like a poem, isn't it?
It is.
No
it is. If you want your life to become less interesting.
I mean, really? Oh dear.
I mean, some of them you can tell they've really sort of relished sticking the boot in, and you feel like you've actually given them a nice feeling, and you can take some sort of satisfaction for that. But yeah, that you're right. You just want to sit down and make them a cup of tea.
Contrast that with this review of Rush of Blood. I loved all the Thorne books, but this is a standalone book. So stand it alone in some petrol and burn it.
We are getting a lot of chat on the chat about Mark's doll. Mark, do you want to talk a little bit about your guest?
I will just allow the audience to decide this, because I'm seeing some of this chat, and some people are going, "Oh my God, the doll, the freaky, scary doll," and some people are going, "I love a scary doll." So basically, let's have a little poll. I can cover the doll up. I can put something over the doll's face if it's really disturbing people. So, okay, I love the doll. There you go. Here they come. I love the doll.
Cover the doll! Exclamation mark.
You want me to cover the doll, Elly?
No.
I'm going to go and cover the doll. I'm going to go and cover
there's
the
a lot of doll feedback here.
No. The chat's going.
Wow, yeah.
Okay.
Kill the doll.
Chris is fine. I'm going to go and get the bloody doll. You're going to see the doll.
I think the rest of the panel is going to be done by the doll from Mark's side. Okay, yeah, put the doll away.
Yeah.
I didn't look it in the eye. I'm okay. I made sure I didn't.
The doll is covered now. Jesus,
Well,
you people are squeamish for crime writers.
I have the thing Mark was looking for. It's not a 1-star review. It was actually.
But it's just a classic piece of reader correspondence.
Someone's saying, "I loved Dead Girl Walking." It was a letter from a German correspondent. It's a book that mostly takes place in Berlin. I loved Dead Girl Walking. The only things that distracted me from enjoying reading it were factual errors about the Berlin public transport network. There are no westbound U5 trains from Alexanderplatz, at least not yet. The westward extension is supposed to be completed in 2017, but then this being Berlin, it could well be delayed by years. I wonder if that was a deliberate fictionalisation on your part, because everything else is well researched and very credible, including all the building work around the museum island. Oh, except that you can't change to S-Bahn at Brandenburger Tor. It's only a U-Bahn station. You'd have to walk to Friedrichstrasse to catch an S-Bahn train. I'm sorry to be nitpicking, but things like this really do distract me from reading.
It's just these people, they clearly want some sort of reward or certificate for catching that stuff. It reminds me of in the old Marvel comics, they used to have a thing called a no prize, where if somebody noticed a mistake, they could only write in about it if they came up with an explanation to rationalize why it wasn't really a mistake. So I think we should start that in Amazon reviews. They should tell you, actually, this shows that this book is actually set in the year 2018 in Berlin, once you can take a westbound train from Alexanderplatz.
That's a great
But many of people are now saying that the doll, by the way, he's going to
burn it all
to me in the night. No, they're sort of going, "How dare you do that to the doll? Tonight the doll will cover Mark's face with that cushion." I don't like him covered up. I'm going to uncover it. I'm sorry. It's not fair. Leave him alone. Hello. There we go.
Mark, can you tell us a bit about the doll? I know it's a bit.
I've always had this thing about sort of. I mean, you think that's spooky. There's an awful lot of weird dolls' heads and skulls and things you can't see. But I've always had a weird thing about ventriloquist dolls. And I was walking through a market, just a market. I'll tell you exactly where. In Deal, in Kent, just a market they have in this car park every Saturday morning. And there he was, Charlie, just sitting in a basket. And I thought, oh my God, look at him. And I said, "How much?" And I promise you, if the bloke had said 50 quid, I'd have snapped his hand off. And he said, "tenner." And I went, couldn't believe it. Just fantastic. And he's been sat there watching me work ever since. And it's fantastic to pop it at the end of your kids' beds in the middle of the night. They love that. The laughs we have.
Just having a look at the Q&As, we've got a couple of questions in here. Okay. One of them looks quite good. Is there anything that the authors find useful about bad reviews?
Well, Chris and I have got so much mileage out of them in the show we do. I mean, seriously, like those 1-star reviews, the kind of letter that Chris, Chris and I will call each other up going, "I've had a cracker, here's a new one." And it's given us so much material to do late night at book festivals. The other kind of 1-star review that really confuses me is the one that makes you think, what kind of book did you think you were reading? You know what I mean? You've picked, you've had a look, you've seen what it is. This is from quite a recent book of mine, 1-star review. I'm sad to say, this book continues a new style for Mark, where there is far too much detail relating to people's lives. For the second time in a row, only one person actually dies in this book, and the whole story revolves around people's lives, and you have to guess who done it. Well, I mean, that's clearly not going to catch on as a trope of science fiction.
You don't want things about people's lives.
People's lives?
Oh, I got a very similar one that just for Black Widow, a 1-star review said emotional constantly. It's as if all the characters are always self-centered and do not lead a life except their connection to the lengthy plot. 1 star.
Yeah, stop with all this emotional stuff, Chris. Just stop it. What are you thinking?
What is that about characters relating to the plot? I mean, Chris, you've got to stop that, really. You've got to stop that madness now.
Personally, I prefer focusing on all the characters who have nothing whatsoever to do with the plot and just have a nice day and go to Tesco and
but they
nothing
might
bad
lead
happens.
better lives. They might be, nicer people. So, where's their representation?
One of the things that people seem to be commenting on in the chat is that a lot of people are saying, this is fantastic hearing that you all get these terrible reviews. It's making me feel so much better.
Glad we could be of service.
Well, it is. We are glad to be of service, but it is true, isn't it? All of us have just been slagged off rotten one time or another.
And people are within their rights to do it, aren't they, if they don't like it? Has anyone seen on Amazon you can buy a book of 1-star reviews for everything that they do? And it's got a lot of 1-star reviews itself, which I guess is kind of meta, isn't it? You couldn't kind of stop yourself doing it. But there's some really good things, like somebody complaining that from a toy shop they bought from their child a make-believe dragon. But, I mean, were they expecting a real dragon? It's very, very strange.
This is an interesting question. Do you find that the quality of the reviews differs depending on which website it's been put on? I don't really know of any other site where you get 1-star reviews. There's Goodreads, isn't there, which I don't look at. I don't understand how to do Goodreads or what that is. So I suppose we're mostly talking about the ones on Amazon, are we?
Mostly. When my first book came out in the States, I got some reviews on the Barnes & Noble website, and most of them were fairly sort of par for the course. But one of them was 1 star, I sniff glue. That's all it said. It was just, but it counted. And I tried reporting it, but yeah, it's probably still up there as far as I know.
What about, have you ever had reviews that give away plot spoilers, where you then have to, it's impossible to get them taken down? I had a couple of reviews. They weren't necessarily, I can't even remember. I don't think they were good or bad. They were just middling reviews, but they basically gave away massive plot spoilers, and even the publisher couldn't get them taken down.
Yeah, I mean, Amazon is fine with 1 star. I don't like the fact that Jeff was the killer, but they're completely okay with hasn't arrived yet as a legitimate review appearing. So.
I think that's one of the areas where you get really frustrated by. There was a question there about, is there anything to be learned from the reviews? And if it sounds like an interesting review where they didn't like the book but they engaged with it, that's fine. But you sometimes read someone saying, I didn't like this element of it, although some other aspect was handled quite well. These characters were interesting, but I was disappointed in the way the plot went. And then 1 star. And it's as if there's no calibration, between... There's a sort of entitlement there. If a book disappoints me in any way, it has to be given 1 star. But I suppose what we get really frustrated by is obviously the delivery one. This book was late, 1 star. I had one for Fallen Angels, an ebook review, and it's 1 star review headlined "Download, you twat." I would love to have this book on my other device. I lost count of the times I tried. It won't download. Could this be a really bad haiku? So, but you get this all the time. And I got a 1-star review for Bedlam, which has now been, they've taken this one down. I have to show you why. They said that it wouldn't load. The Kindle version kept getting stuck. And it kept saying loading file 1 of 3, and it wouldn't load. And I had to point out that here is the page concerned. It's loading file 1 of 3 from the... and the person hadn't clicked to the next page, and they thought their Kindle had sort of jammed.
It's so funny. You should do that again, Chris, and have a page saying something like, I don't know, your files are going to blow up in 5 minutes. That would be so funny.
I know where you live.
There's a typo in apparently in the ebook of Fallen Angel, where out of nowhere an IP address appears in the middle of a word, and it's actually the IP address of your router. And I thought that would have been great if it was in Want You Gone, because it's all about hacking. Because if someone would have keyed that in and said, "What is this IP address?" They put in the numbers and saw that it was the address of their own router, that would have really freaked them out.
Yes.
If they didn't know that everyone's router has the same IP address.
Somebody's
Dan
just
should have
pointed
done
out.
that in the intrusion, shouldn't he? That would have been a really good.
Yeah.
Really
Somebody's been doing research on our behalf, and somebody's put here, there's a 1-star review for one of Mark's books that is titled 1 star too much. This is totally unacceptable. It should say 1 star too many. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for grammatically correcting.
Well,
That was really meta. That was a 1-star review of a 1-star review.
Yeah.
So well done for that.
I do think there is to be fair to people sometimes, especially the people who give a book they liked 1 star. Now when you read a book on Kindle, you feel almost like you should review it, don't you? There's that thing that comes up saying with those stars. So I wonder if people do feel a bit bullied that they have to give a review.
That would probably explain. One of the reviews I got for my 3rd book was 1 star, not sure yet, just started to read it. And obviously didn't complete reading it and come back to amend the review. But
The only thing wrong with that, yes, and I totally feel for that person, is when they finished it, they could give you 5 stars and say, I loved it. We don't need to, or they could go back and change it. But
Sometimes I felt it very much when you were reading that one out, Alex, the Gurr one.
hair flicking.
They're very rarely signed reviews. I mean, quite often.
Yeah.
And that one should have been, signed, Bob, brackets, who's written a book 10 times better than this that nobody will publish. You do slightly get a feeling of a bubbling resentment sometimes. And the other thing there is, which we should possibly just touch on, are those reviews written by people with professional agendas. There certainly have been cases, and I'm not going to mention any names because these people don't need any more bloody publicity, but people who have written not only glowing reviews of their own books, glowing 5-star reviews of their own books, but then rubbish reviews of people they view as competition. I mean, I think Amazon have tried to stamp down on that kind of whole sock puppet thing. I don't know whether that's been successful, but
yeah, that's weird.
I
mean, you could almost understand someone want to inflate their own good reviews, but why would you go and slam somebody else? Because it's not like they're going to read that 1-star review of Lee Child and say, "Oh well, I better go and buy a book by this other guy." I mean,
I guess they're trying to mess with the algorithms or whatever it is. But writing glowing 5-star reviews of your own stuff is just, and also I think one of the reasons that this particular person got caught is they didn't just go, "This is a great book, I enjoyed it, 5 stars." It was just poetic kind of. I had to read certain passages again because I was weeping. Got you.
Best book in the universe, best book ever written. Yes.
Yeah.
I think it is quite hard, isn't it, to write? I think one of the many reasons why we wouldn't give ourselves 5-star reviews, it is quite hard to write them yourself, isn't it? And that's why it's quite. I used to be a publisher and I was always blurbing other people's books, but it's really hard for your own. I remember when my first crime book came out, I remember meeting Reginald Hill, and I'm a huge fan of his, and he was really lovely to me, really nice. And he came over and he said, "And what's your book about?" And I said, "Norfolk." Sounds really good. To be honest, if I was telling him about any of your books, I could do a great job. But no.
See, just
What's the thing?
that,
And you're also your own
subject,
book's worst critic, aren't you?
Well, yeah, just on that subject, here's a review of Black Widow that says a completely confusing and annoying novel. Chapters jump about between timelines and different characters' experiences. It was like reading multiple books at the same time, and I am amazed and suspicious of the rave reviews and 5 stars given. It is a well-known fact, all caps, that the majority of the rave reviews and 5 stars are given by the authors, friends and relatives and employees of the publishers. 1 star.
I mean, maybe that happens. Maybe we're just naive and some of that stuff happens. But we know it has happened in the past, but I think it's always created such a stink when it's happened that I don't think people would be still trying to get away with it. I don't know. Am I being naive?
I don't know. I think it's a lot of effort for very little gain. If you're talking about,
I don't have enough relatives. I definitely don't have enough friends.
No.
Listen, I've met some of your relatives, Chris. They wouldn't be giving you 5 stars.
I've had relatives give me less than 5 stars. Say no more. But
Well, isn't that a weird thing? Sometimes you've got really good friends or people you think of or thought of as really good friends, and they don't read your books. It's kind of an odd thing. There's a sort of weird passive-aggressive thing. Things want to be. Oh, I'll get around to it eventually. And because I'm always thinking, if you made like an album or wrote a book, I'd listen to it, or what I would, because I'm your friend. But some people make a big point, don't they, of going, I'm a bit busy for the minute.
my husband hasn't read my books.
Oh, really?
And I would think if he wrote a book, I would be all over reading it. But,
exactly.
And Chris has written a book with his wife, hasn't he? Which is real, teamwork and dedication. But no, and I'm slightly pleased that he hasn't, in a way. And he's an archaeologist. So some of the people say to me, "Oh, is the archaeology in your books from him?" And I say no, because he hasn't even read them. But I do think that he would feel he had to give me kind of a critique, which I wouldn't like. So maybe it's okay.
There's somebody's drawing our attention to the subset of 1-star reviewers who get furious about the treatment of fictional pets.
Oh yeah. I know you've had some problems with that, Mark.
Well, only not until the one particular book I wrote a couple of years ago, which is a book based on a real case, a book called The Killing Habit, about a cat killer. And obviously,
Croydon cat killer.
The Croydon cat killer, who then became the N25 cat killer, who then became the UK cat killer. And, horrible stuff. But of course, the police are very interested because we all know that can be an early sign of somebody who might go on to commit far worse crimes against human beings. And so it wasn't, and there was nothing gratuitous in the book. Nothing was described. But I did events. I did some events with you, Chris, didn't I? Around this time, and I was talking about the book, and people would come up afterwards, literally with a quivering lip, and go, I can't. I just can't. And I'm going, so the people that die in the book, that's okay.
It is
fictional cats.
It is a real thing, because I must admit, I almost said just then I killed a cat in my first book. Of course, I didn't kill a cat. A character killed a cat. Yeah. And I still get letters and emails about that cat. And as Mark said, I don't want to boast, but I've killed a lot of people. Lots of people. Men, nobody really cares. But I do slightly wonder if it's people suspect that you kill a cat for the plot, don't you? It's like if you're watching a horror film, and you know how the family are all moving into that nice house, that nice sort of clapperboard house, and they're all moving in, and there's a dog barking happily nearby. You just know something's going to happen to that dog. And I think people might suspect you kill an animal just for the fun of it, but none of us would do that, It's a bit like that review that said they only do things for the plot. You would only do it for the plot, but people do get very, very upset about animals, very upset, especially cats, I think.
I don't know how I got away with it. And quite ugly one morning, I got no backlash, probably because it was before the sort of social media era, because in that book, the hitman kills a dog because it's sort of barking and annoying him, and he then carries the dead dog around in a bag for several days trying to get rid of it. And I did it all purely for laughs. The dog was stabbed for laughs. It was carried around in a bag for laughs. It was all cheap laughs. And I got absolutely no backlash whatsoever.
If it had been a cat, though, Chris, I have to say I love that book so much.
Thank you.
It's such a brilliant book.
I actually had a similar thing. I killed a dog in my second book, and I remember going to see one of Mark's events where he was talking about all the backlash he'd had about this sort of stuff. And the next one I did, I mentioned that I'd killed a book and nobody minded. And somebody in the front row immediately exclaimed, "I minded!" But luckily they hadn't reviewed me, so it was okay.
It is very weird. Do you think we should try and address some of these questions?
Yeah, there's actually a couple of really good ones in the chat. Sharon Bearden has asked quite a pertinent question. Have any of the panel left a 1-star review for anything?
No, I haven't. I wouldn't do it. Even if it was a make-believe dragon, I wouldn't do it.
I haven't left a 1-star review for a book, but I did once leave a 1-star review for a cafe in the merchant city of Glasgow, which will remain nameless, because they sold me a soup and a sandwich deal, which was basically a polystyrene cup with a partially diluted cup of soup in it, and like a single slice of bread folded over some quite dodgy ham. And it was basically the sort of lunch that a mum in the 80s would give her child if she really, really didn't like him.
No,
but that's the only time I've been moved to really register my displeasure in that way.
That's definitely a crime. You should have killed them off in a book.
The one thing I would say, this addresses a couple of questions I can see coming in about, does it actually hit home ever, or hurt or upset you or whatever, it's the bad reviews are the ones you remember. They certainly are the ones you remember compared with the really good. Do you know what I mean? I mean, if you write a book and you get 10 reviews and 9 of them are just glowing, I'm not necessarily talking about ones online, and you get one bad one. It's the bad one that you tend to go, yeah, they're right. Yeah. It's the bad one that you sort of remember. And this goes back, going back to my stand-up days. If you were having a gig and there's 300 people in the audience, 299 people are pissing themselves, it's the one person that isn't that bothers you. That's the only thing you go to bed that night worrying about, was what was the matter with that person. And sometimes it's the niggly little 1-star ones that bother you, much more, I think.
I think that's definitely right, Mark. You do just remember those. Yeah. And it does. I do find it really upsetting, but weirdly, having read them for this panel has made it a bit less upsetting. So maybe I should be a bit braver about them now on.
When you get bad reviews from in the conventional press, they're quite often written by people you will know or will meet at the next publishing event. It's such a small world, and that you get that thing of writers reviewing other writers, which is always really dodgy thing. But there was a writer who I really admire as a writer, and I see quite often. And every time I see him, I might just turn around with the beer in my hand, and there he is. And all I can think of was that he wrote about my first book. This book isn't all bad. That's all I can remember is that phrase. And I've never mentioned it to him. I've never gone, do you remember when you... But that's what popped into my head. No, hello, mate, how are you? Oh, dear.
Somebody else in the chat has asked, have you ever written anything that in hindsight you think maybe deserved a 1-star review?
I think very few books deserve a 1-star review. That's to come back to the point that there's no calibration. It would have to be fairly incompetent or something absolutely abhorrent in terms of its subject matter. Like Richard Littlejohn's novel or something like that. Or Boris Johnson's one of the 72 Virgins. There's very few books that if someone's put their effort and their craft into it, that it would be worth 1 star. So I think that's why it's so galling.
And I think there are books that you wouldn't read, like in certain genres, but then you wouldn't read them, would you? You wouldn't read them just for the fun of, I think maybe we've all had reviews saying things like, oh, there's far too much crime in this book, Then why read a crime novel, really? I do sympathise, but why read a crime novel? So, yes, and, it does take a long time to write a book, even a bad one, and it feels like 1 star is very little for sort of several years' work.
I think the simple fact is there's always going to be something in any book you write that's going to upset somebody. It's like a tiny little sort of microcosm of something like Twitter, where you could make the most innocuous comment about anything. Somebody will get upset, right? And I how we all have these little verbal tics that we use in our books, you know, gestures and words that we all overuse. For me, it's things like shrugging. I'm always having characters shrug.
Oh God, yeah.
Too much.
Sighing. My character's always sighing.
Sighing. Right. Right. Oh, occasionally, just occasionally, maybe once or twice in a book, I'll have a character clear their throat. You know, you've got something important to say, so you go, I had this woman went mental about it. She was constantly writing me emails because apparently she had some kind of throat clearing related medical issue.
Oh, dear.
And it was like I was doing it somehow to upset her and was insisting that I stop it at once. How can you legislate for that? You know, maybe there's somebody who has a shrugging issue that I should be wary about, or sighing. Maybe you're upsetting the nation's sires.
I obviously am, and it's obviously a really, really annoying thing to do. And I've noticed, gosh, lockdown, I don't know whether we've all noticed odd things about it. My whole family tell me that I just sigh all the time. So it must be me. It's so awful when we're watching some television program and I'll be like, oh, how annoying.
I think people do sigh and shrug and nod a lot in real life, but if you do that in a book, it becomes really irritating.
I think you really hit on something here, which is how much your family during lockdown, and you know, and it works both ways, of course, but notice those things about you because they're with you all the time, because nobody can get away from each other. And it's like, my wife's constantly saying, why do you make noises all the time? You make a noise when you sit down, you make a noise when you stand up. And that, you know, that thing when you get to a certain age and you can't actually stand up without going, hup! You actually have to, you do. It's the only way to get out of the chair when you hit a certain age. But those constant little things, and then you become so aware of them, those things that you are told you do all the time.
Somebody, Paul Harvey has said in the comments that sighing is normal for Norfolk. You're right there, Paul.
Normal for Norfolk.
Normal for Norfolk.
I should just say, actually, my chat window has frozen, so if anybody sees any really great ones that I've not seen, feel free to pull them out.
Well, there's a bookseller here saying, I can't agree that there are books which don't deserve 1 star. I read about one a week. Well, okay. I was accused of writing Catholic bashing disguised as literature. I have never written literature.
I've got someone asking, did I get a backlash from the unsinkable rubber ducks? And and I really didn't, because I remember the Sun tried to get a response from psychics and mediums who are people who are not normally shy of publicity, and none of them wanted to deal with it because they essentially didn't want to engage with a book that told you all about how they pull off their frauds and do all their tricks. So I actually got, I think a lot of my books that I thought would provoke a backlash didn't, because the people most likely to be offended by them were also the people least likely to read them.
That comment about literature, though, reminds me of the first time I ever heard you talk, Chris. I hope it's okay to say this. You were saying, you were talking, you said, when I read about literary novelists, my attitude is one of awe. Oh, shut the fuck up. Sorry, everyone. He said it. But I've never...
It's okay, we broke the swearing barrier about 3 minutes into this. So
oh, yes, we did, and that was Chris's fault, wasn't
Chris.
it?
Yep.
No,
It usually is. I mean,
too much swearing, somebody says, 1 star.
I had someone congratulate me for not relying upon foul language, and I went back and I went to the original document and did a sort of find on Word for how many times I'd used the word fuck, and it was like 34 times, and this was the book that this nice old lady had read and congratulated me on not using foul language. So I can only assume that I was using it so judiciously that she didn't notice the F-bombs as they flew past her.
Once every 10 pages.
Well, I don't think we should get Chris started on this subject. We've actually turned this into that show, in the show Chris and I do, we've turned it into an on-stage game show where people have to come out of the audience and there's a whole list of Chris's books and they have to try and decide which one of them has the most profanity in it. And they win prize. It's fantastic. I don't know why TV
specific is
knocking on the door.
It's which one's got the most use of the C-bomb. And it all derives from a letter I got from a lady who was complaining that I'd started using that word in my books. And I'd sort of reply to her and point out that all the counts of how many times I'd used it in all of the books that she'd already read
Did you say you started using it just to be trendy?
Yeah. She was asking how I started using it just to be edgy and trendy. And she'd read all my previous books, and she'd read books in which it was used like 60 and 70 times, you know. It was just inexplicable.
Are you going to reveal what the game show's called?
Our
game show.
Oh, wasn't it Sweary Bingo?
Well, no, we talked about Sweary Bingo, and in the end we just went for Cunt Down.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. We've got the...
Apologies,
yeah,
but don't shoot the messenger. We have actually got a clock that goes da 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 da. Come along and be upset.
Come along, see our show and give it a 1-star review.
What else have we got?
Interesting one in the Q&A that I can still hear that specifically for Mark saying, does it hurt more to get a bad review as a performer or as an actor? I don't know if they meant as a writer or as an actor.
Do you know what? I think it kind of does, because I suppose we're sort of at one remove in a way. I think if I know it's true when an actor if they especially don't get a part, if they audition for something and they don't get a part, that's a really personal rejection. It's really quite personal. Or if I do feel probably that performers, when they get bad reviews, they take it more to heart than we do, I suppose, because we're sort of at one remove. Yeah, they're our words on the page, but it's not us as people.
And I wonder if Alex Mason has this feeling too, because it's, for me, if I get a bad review as Elly Griffiths, it's not as bad as because I used to write under my real name, Domenica De Rosa. It's not as bad as a bad review for Domenica De Rosa, but equally a good review is not as good. Because it's slightly, I suppose now I have written, I don't know, 25 books? 20 books as Elly, anyhow, about that. So I should be a bit more used to it, but still it's not the same. It's not quite the same as somebody saying my name and something bad about it. Alex, do you have any?
I think that's true. And I think also what Mark was saying about it being at one remove because it's in the book, I think also because we're done with the book usually a year before the readers get it, you do have a bit of distance on it. And you've probably worked through your own sort of feelings about the book. I mean, by the time I've had it, and I never want to read the damn thing again, so I've got sympathy with anybody who wants to give me a 1-star review. But I think that distance helps a bit, because it's not just something that you've just created that somebody is pissing all over, in the same way that if you were auditioning or actually giving a live, acting job in a play. Yeah, it's not as immediate feedback. So maybe that helps a bit.
I suppose the other thing we should say is that whether they're 1-star reviews, 2, 3, 4 or 5-star reviews, getting reviews of any sort is probably better than feeling like the book has been ignored.
Yeah.
That we all spend however long, I guess, a year on average, probably most of us, writing this thing, and then it goes out there, and then it's out there. And that's the real difference between writing a book and doing a kind of performance, because the reaction to a performance is instant. Is that, straight away if a joke has worked or if it hasn't worked, but we've no idea how people are responding to our books. We might maybe get reviews in the press that are written by professional reviewers, journalists and stuff, but how the average reader is reacting to them is something we'll never know. So getting these reviews is kind of important, I think.
I think that's exactly right, Mark. And we're really grateful for people who review our books. And I can remember when I first started writing, I was writing women's fiction, kind of almost before there was such an online thing. And it was like you put the book out there, and it was like nobody ever read it, no one reviewed it. So I'm so grateful for like crime reviewers and bloggers and people who actually, because otherwise it's like you write a book and no one has read it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'd definitely rather get bad reviews than nobody reading the books at all. Definitely.
Bad reviews better than no reviews.
Yeah, somebody asked that. Somebody said you'd rather have a 3-star than no review. And somebody else asked how a 2-star review compares to 1-star review. I don't know, 2-star.
Yeah, I'd rather have a 1-star. I'd rather have a 1-star.
Yeah. Yeah, a 2-stars, they don't quite have the sort of guts to go for go for the jugular. So a good sort of 1-star review is always a little bit fun to read on some level.
You do realise that we are just massively encouraging a huge onslaught.
I was going to say we're not soliciting any new 1-star reviews, so please don't do that after this panel. We've only got a couple of minutes left, actually.
Yeah.
Has anybody seen any of the questions that they sort of have a burning desire to answer before we wrap up and
Well, somebody
Till the
says the
next
C
panel.
word is absolutely a term of endearment in my family.
Oh, that's nice.
Thank you for
That's
that.
probably from Scotland again.
Yeah.
Have you replied to bad reviews? Someone's asked.
Well, that's a good question.
Has anyone done that?
I think that's never a good idea, no matter how justified you may feel. Has anybody ever wanted to do that?
Apart from when I obviously asked that person if they meant to give me 1 star. No. I've been tempted to. I've even drafted something, but no.
Oh, you drafted it and then at the last
and then
minute.
burnt it at midnight. Normal for golf.
It is massively tempting sometimes, massively tempting, especially when you get the one complaining about the use of bad language. That's always the one, because the reply is obvious.
Yes.
The reply just comes straight into your head. It's pithy. There's usually a couple of words, and you just think, no, don't, because it will just end up in a huge spat. Because it's never the end of it, is it? It's never kind of, I have occasionally replied to go, I'm really sorry you didn't enjoy this book. If they've maybe been an email or something that's made me go, oh yeah, actually they've got a point. They've got a point. Maybe I didn't do such a good job on that or whatever.
I guess that's different. When somebody emails you with feedback, then that's fine to reply. And I have done that with people that have emailed me with mixed reviews, and they're usually quite pleased when you go back to them and that you acknowledge them.
I'm probably just sighing passive aggressively. Now I realise that's what I do.
Oh my God, our time is about up.
So I think we are just about out of time. So stay tuned, because at 4 o'clock it's going to be the one and only Val McDermott. So that's in about half an hour. But in the meantime, if you've enjoyed this panel, please go and give us all 5 stars. I forgot to mention mine at the start. It was hunted. And you can get a discount from Watchstones, as Steve said, by entering the locked up code. If you just Google Watchstones and Locked Up Festival and go to the website, they'll be happy to do you a discount there.
People are just putting stars now.
We're closed for submissions for new 1-star reviews. It will open again sometime in the future, and we'll let you know.
Well, thanks for everybody who's tuned in and enjoy the rest of the festival.
Yeah, and I would just like, in the comfort of your own homes, please confuse your spouses, children, and housemates by giving a big hand for our panel. Elly Griffiths, Chris Brookmyre, and Mark Billingham.
Cheers.
I feel really silly.
See you all soon, everybody.
Cheerio.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers. Thanks. See you. Bye.